We all feel it, right? When prices for everything just keep going up. But what if the whole reason why they go up isn't what we've been told? Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating new theory that looks at inflation not as a problem of money, but as a fundamental problem of, well, of disorder?
Okay, so for decades, this one quote from the economist Milton Friedman has been gospel. It's the classic story, the one you probably learned in Econ 101. Inflation is all about the money supply. Simple as that.
But then, 2021 and 2022 happened. That massive spike in inflation just didn't quite fit the old model, and it left a lot of economists kind of scratching their heads. So it begs the question, what if the money story isn't the beginning of the chain, but actually the very end?
So before we jump into the new stuff, we've got to be super clear on where we've been. Let's do a quick recap of that traditional view of inflation.
The core logic is actually pretty simple. If the government suddenly prints way more money, but the amount of stuff to buy, cars, houses, coffee, stays exactly the same, well, each of those dollars is suddenly worth a little bit less. And what happens? Prices have to go up. That's the heart of the quantity theory of money. All right, now let's pivot to this new idea, because this theory suggests that inflation isn't really an economic thing at its core. No, it argues it's a thermodynamic phenomenon, rooted in something way more basic than money, just the simple act of us competing to buy and sell things.
And the key word you gotta know here is entropy. It's a concept straight out of physics, and it's basically just a measure of messiness or randomness. So think about it like this. A perfectly organized, clean room has low entropy. A super messy room where everything's thrown around, that has high entropy. Well, this theory takes that same exact idea and applies it to our economy.
So where does all this economic messiness even come from? Well, the theory argues it comes from competition itself. It says that anytime you have people competing for scarce resources, there's this natural pull for the cost of getting what you want to creep up over time. It's like a built-in economic arms race. And to make this super clear, the source uses these fantastic examples from biology. First, you have something called runaway selection. Think about peacocks. They evolve these ridiculously long, beautiful tails. Now, these tails are a huge pain. They're expensive for the bird's body to make, and they make it harder to escape from predators. So why have them? Because they're absolutely essential to compete for a mate. That's a cost that inflates over time. Then there's the red queen effect, where you have, say, a parasite and its host, locked in this constant battle, both evolving as fast as they can just to stay alive, just to stay in the same place. In both cases, the cost of just surviving or competing keeps going up and up.
So let's bring that back to the economy. The theory calls this the exchange entropy principle. It says that in any system where you have scarcity and competition, the simple act of exchanging things naturally increases the disorder, the entropy. Money doesn't cause this. Money just acts like an accelerant. It removes the natural brakes on this process and lets it spiral.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This sounds fascinating, sure, but a bit abstract. Can you actually measure this economic messiness? Well, it turns out the answer is a big yes.
So researchers came up with this really clever metric they call price entropy, which they write as H sub T. They basically borrowed a tool from information theory that measures unpredictability, and they applied it to that basket of goods we use to measure inflation. In plain English, it's a way of tracking how scattered and all over the place our collective spending habits are from one month to the next.
And this is where it really clicks. Think about your own life. In a low-entropy, orderly economy, your spending is pretty predictable, right? You buy your groceries, pay your rent, get gas. It's a stable routine. But in a high-entropy, disorderly economy, prices are wild. One month chicken is cheap, the next it's expensive, so you buy pork. Gas prices shoot up, so you drive less. You find yourself scrambling, substituting, and just scattering your spending around to cope. That scattering, that is a direct measure of rising entropy.
And check it out, here's some actual data from a study in Taiwan. For their basket of goods, the absolute maximum level of disorder, the theoretical limit, is what they call 3 bits. And the highest they ever actually saw in the real world was 2.89 bits. So what this shows is that, yeah, our spending can get really chaotic, but it all happens within a predictable mathematical limit.
Now here is the absolute key. This price entropy thing isn't just some weird, quirky measurement. The study found that it's a leading indicator. A big spike in this spending disorder reliably predicts that headline inflation is going to rise about 3 months down the road. It's literally an early warning system.
And get this, they even pinpointed the specific tripwire. Using that data from Taiwan, they calculated that when price entropy crosses 2.59 bits and stays up there, It's a huge red flag that a period of sustained inflation is probably right around the corner.
Okay, so if inflation is a state of economic disorder, a mess, what does it actually take to clean it up? What is the real price of restoring order?
And to answer that, the theory pulls in another really powerful idea from physics. This one is called Landauer's principle. And it's a fundamental law of the universe that says erasing information, which is just another way of saying creating order, is not free. It has a real, unavoidable energy cost.
So let's walk through this. Step 1, the economy is messy, it's in a state of high entropy. Step 2, the central bank steps in. It tries to act like a sorting machine to put everything back in order. But Step 3, Landauer's principle tells us that this sorting process has to have a real cost. You can't get it for free. So what's the price? Well, in economics, that cost is paid through the pain of high interest rates, which are designed to cool the whole system down.
And they even put a number on it. The research estimates that to reduce price entropy by just 1 bit, to make the system significantly more orderly, it requires a sustained real interest rate hike of about 1.75%. That's 175 basis points. That is a huge economic price to pay to clean up the mess.
And here is the real kicker. That cost is irreversible. Think about it. It is incredibly easy to shatter a glass, right? But it's pretty much impossible for all those little pieces to just spontaneously jump back together. It's the same idea here. It is far, far easier for an economy to slide into the chaos of inflation than it is to fight its way back to stability. Taming inflation is a long, hard, and costly battle for a very fundamental reason.
So, when you put all of these pieces together, what do you get? Well, it suggests a completely new rulebook for how we should think about and maybe even manage inflation.
This table just sums up the whole idea perfectly. At the very bottom, the deepest level, you have the spark. That's just us, competing for stuff that's scarce. That competition then adds the fuel, that measurable growth in economic disorder in entropy. And only then, at the very top, do you get the fire, the thing we actually see and feel, which is monetary inflation. Money isn't the spark, it's just the gasoline poured on the fire.
And what's amazing is that this whole big idea boils down to a pretty simple practical rule you could actually use. If your measure of price entropy, that HT number, climbs above that 2.59 warning level and stays there for 2 straight quarters, that's a powerful signal that maybe it's time to start tightening policy before the fire gets out of control.
And that leaves us with this one final, really provocative thought. If this new theory holds up, it could be a major paradigm shift. It suggests that the job of a central banker isn't just about managing the money supply. It's about managing the fundamental forces of disorder in an economy. So is the future of economics really about managing entropy? It's a powerful and totally new way to look at a very, very old problem.